Jamal had always been fascinated by anything that whirred, clicked, or had gears. From a young age, he could be found taking apart old radios or fixing broken appliances in the small apartment he shared with his mother and two sisters. The neighborhood was rough, and opportunities were scarce, but Jamal never let go of his dream to one day become a renowned mechanic. On this particular afternoon, Jamal was on his way back from school when he noticed a crowd gathered around a sleek motorcycle at the corner of his street. The bike was obviously expensive and out of place in this part of town. Curiosity getting the better of him, Jamal edged closer and saw a man dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, looking bewildered as he fiddled with the engine. Seeing someone in distress with a machine was all the invitation Jamal needed. He approached the man, his heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Looks like you're having some trouble," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The man looked up, his expression changing from frustration to relief. "Yeah, it just stalled and won't start up again. I'm not really good with engines," he admitted with a sheepish grin. Jamal smiled, his eyes scanning over the motorcycle. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, already kneeling beside the bike before the man even nodded his consent. As Jamal inspected the engine, he could feel the stranger's gaze on him, curious and hopeful. "By the way, I'm Keanu," said the man, extending a hand. Jamal shook it. "I'm Jamal." As Jamal worked, Keanu watched him with interest. "You seem to know your way around engines pretty well," Keanu remarked. "My grandpa was a mechanic. He taught me a few things before he passed," Jamal replied, not taking his eyes off the motorcycle. After a few minutes of tinkering, he found the problem: a loose wire in the ignition system. He fixed it quickly, his fingers deft and sure. "Try starting it now," Jamal said, stepping back to give Keanu space. Keanu hopped onto the bike, turned the key, and the engine roared to life, purring like a contented cat. A cheer went up from the small crowd that had gathered, and Keanu's face broke into a wide, grateful smile. "Man, you saved me. How can I ever thank you?" Keanu asked, his relief palpable. "It's no big deal, really. I'm glad I could help," Jamal responded, feeling a warm glow of pride swell in his chest. Keanu shook his head. "No, I insist. Let me at least buy you dinner to say thanks," he said. Jamal hesitated. It wasn't every day that a stranger, especially one with a fancy bike, offered him dinner. After a moment's thought, he nodded. "Sure, I guess that would be okay." As they walked to a nearby diner, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter might just be the beginning of something new. He didn't know much about this Keanu guy, but he had a feeling that the rest of the evening was going to be anything but ordinary. That evening, Jamal sat down for dinner with his family, his mind buzzing with the possibilities Keanu had laid out before him. The small, cramped dining room felt cozier than usual as his mother served up a simple meal of stew and rice. Jamal's two younger sisters chattered about their day at school, blissfully unaware of the significant conversation that was about to unfold. As they began to eat, Jamal cleared his throat, capturing the attention of his mother and sisters. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important," he started, his voice steady, but filled with a mix of nervousness and excitement. His mother looked at him, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What is it, Jamal? Is everything okay?" she asked, concern etching her features. Jamal nodded, taking a deep breath before continuing. "It's more than okay, actually. You remember the guy whose motorcycle I fixed yesterday? Well, he came back today. He wants to help me get into a program for mechanics, maybe even find a scholarship." The room went silent for a moment as his words sank in. Jamal's mother looked at him, a mix of surprise and skepticism on her face. "Really? That's wonderful, Jamal. But why would he do that? People don't just offer help like that for no reason," she said cautiously. Jamal understood her skepticism. Their life had taught them to be wary of seemingly good fortunes. "I know, Mom, it sounds weird, but he's genuine. He thinks I could do well in this field, and he has contacts. He's offering to make some calls, see if he can help me get started on a career." His sisters listened with wide eyes, sensing the excitement in Jamal's voice. His mother paused, looking down at her plate, then back up at Jamal. "This could be a big opportunity, honey. But we need to be careful. We don't know this man very well." Jamal nodded, acknowledging her concerns. "I know, and I'll be careful. I promise. But Mom, this could be my chance to do something big, something that could change our lives. I want to at least explore it, see where it goes." His mother watched him for a long moment. Then her expression softened. "Okay," she said finally. "We'll look into this together. If it's a good opportunity, and it's safe, then I want you to take it. You deserve this chance, Jamal." Relief washed over Jamal as his family voiced their support. They spent the rest of the dinner discussing the potential next steps, and for the first time in a long time, Jamal felt like his dreams might actually be within reach. Later that night, Jamal lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The conversation at dinner had made everything feel more real, more possible. He knew there were still many hurdles to overcome, but with Keanu's help and his family's support, he felt ready to face them. As he drifted off to sleep, his heart was full of hope, dreaming of engines, scholarships, and a future filled with possibilities. "You said." Jamal followed Keanu through the spacious workshop, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of gleaming motorcycles, high-tech tools, and mechanics working with quiet precision. The air smelled of oil, metal, and fresh rubber, scents that Jamal had grown to love. Everything in this place looked professional, far beyond the small garage he had at home. A man in his late 40s, with a thick beard and kind eyes, walked up to them. He wore a dark blue jumpsuit with a company logo embroidered on the chest. Keanu introduced him with a grin. "Jamal, this is Rick. He runs this place, and he's been in the business for a long time." Rick studied Jamal for a moment, then offered a handshake. "Keanu's been talking about you. Says you've got some serious skills." Jamal shook his hand firmly. "I try my best," he said, trying to stay calm even though his heart was racing. Rick nodded. "That's what I like to hear. You know, we don't usually bring in people like this, but Keanu insists you're special. So, let's see what you can do." Jamal felt a rush of adrenaline. "Right now?" he asked, glancing around at the expensive machines. Rick chuckled. "Why not? You fixed Keanu's bike, didn't you? Let's see if that was luck or real skill." He pointed to a sleek black motorcycle on a lift. "This one's been giving us trouble. The engine keeps stalling, and we haven't figured out why. Think you can take a look?" Jamal stepped forward, feeling all eyes on him. He took a deep breath, then ran his fingers over the bike's frame, inspecting it like he would back home. He crouched beside it, checked the wiring, and tapped lightly on the engine casing. "Mind if I use some tools?" he asked. Rick nodded and gestured toward a well-stocked tool chest. "Help yourself." Jamal grabbed a wrench and got to work. His nervousness faded as he focused on the machine in front of him. It was just like fixing any other bike. Except this time, he was in a professional shop, proving himself to people who could actually change his future. After about 15 minutes of adjusting and testing, Jamal tightened the last bolt and stepped back. "Try it now," he said. Rick turned the key, and the engine roared to life, running smoothly without a single hiccup. The mechanics around them exchanged impressed glances. Rick grinned. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." Keanu clapped a hand on Jamal's back. "Told you he was the real deal." Rick nodded, clearly considering something. "How would you feel about working here, Jamal? Maybe as an apprentice. We could use someone with hands like yours." Jamal blinked in surprise. Was this really happening? A real job in a professional shop? "I'd love that," he said, unable to keep the excitement out of his voice. Rick smiled. "Good. Let's talk details." Jamal couldn't believe it. His dream was starting to become real. and it was all happening faster than he ever imagined. After their unexpected meeting and a successful repair job, Jamal and Keanu made their way to a small, cozy diner just a few blocks away from where the motorcycle had broken down. The place was a local favorite, known for its hearty meals and friendly atmosphere. As they settled into a booth by the window, Jamal couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. He was just a high school kid from a tough neighborhood, and here he was, having dinner with a stranger who rode a motorcycle that probably cost more than all the furniture in his apartment. Keanu seemed to sense Jamal's discomfort and quickly steered the conversation to more familiar territory. "So Jamal, tell me more about yourself. How did you learn to handle machines so well?" he asked, genuinely interested. Jamal relaxed a bit, grateful for the easy question. "Well, like I said earlier, my grandpa was a mechanic. He used to run a small shop back in the day. After school, I'd go there and just watch him work. He started teaching me little things, and I picked up more as I went along," Jamal explained, his eyes lighting up as he spoke of his grandfather. Keanu nodded, clearly impressed. "That's a great skill to have. Mechanics can do a lot of good in the world, you know. It's like having a superpower." Jamal laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. "I never thought of it that way. But it's just something I love doing. It feels good to fix things, to make them work again." As they talked, the waitress came over with their orders. Burgers and fries, simple and straightforward. The food smelled delicious, and they both dug in with enthusiasm. Between bites, Keanu shared a bit about his own life, careful not to reveal too much about his identity or his background. He talked about his love for motorcycles, his travels, and his admiration for people who could create and repair with their own hands. Jamal listened, fascinated. It wasn't every day he got to hear such stories, and he found himself drawn to Keanu's humble demeanor and easy laugh. There was something about him that felt familiar, like an old friend you could trust immediately. As the meal came to an end, Keanu leaned back and looked thoughtfully at Jamal. "You know, Jamal, I travel a lot, and I meet a lot of people, but it's not every day I meet someone as young and as talented as you. You have a gift, and I think you should pursue it. Have you ever thought about furthering your education in mechanics?" Jamal was taken aback. He had dreamed of it, of course, but college seemed like a distant, almost unattainable dream. "I've thought about it, but it's expensive, you know. My mom works 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. I can't ask her to pay for college too." Keanu nodded, his expression serious. "Money is a big barrier, that's true. But there are scholarships, programs, grants. There are ways, Jamal. If you're really passionate about this, you owe it to yourself to explore every option." The words struck a chord in Jamal. Here was a man, practically a stranger, believing in him, encouraging him to chase his dreams. It was more than what most people had done for him in a long time. As they left the diner, the evening air cool and refreshing, Jamal felt a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe, just maybe, he could make his dreams come true. And maybe, just maybe, this strange new friendship could be the key to opening doors he had thought permanently closed. The next morning, Jamal woke up feeling more hopeful than he had in a long time. The sun streamed through his small bedroom window, casting a warm glow on the walls. He stretched, still half dreaming about motorcycles and the possibilities that lay ahead. But just as he was about to get ready for the day, he heard his younger sister, Aisha, shouting from the living room. "Jamal, there's a big car outside," she yelled. Frowning, Jamal quickly threw on a t-shirt and jeans before rushing to the window. His heart nearly stopped. Parked outside their modest apartment building was a sleek black SUV. It stood out against the old, worn-out cars on the street like something from another world. The engine was running, and a man in a suit stood beside it, looking up at their building. Jamal's mother stepped into the room, her face lined with worry. "Do you know anything about this, Jamal?" she asked, crossing her arms. Jamal swallowed, a sudden mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside him. Maybe, Keanu said he might try to help. Maybe it's someone he sent. His mother gave him a long look before sighing. Well, if they're here for you, go find out. But be careful. Jamal nodded, slipped on his sneakers, and hurried downstairs. As he stepped outside, the man in the suit turned toward him with a polite but serious expression. "Are you Jamal?" the man asked. Jamal hesitated for a second before nodding. "Yeah, that's me." The man smiled. "Mr. Reeves asked me to come pick you up. He wants to see you." Jamal's stomach flipped. Keanu. Again. He had thought their last conversation was just a friendly offer, but now an actual driver was here to take him somewhere. It felt unreal. He glanced back at the apartment, where his mother was watching from the doorway, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Where are we going?" Jamal asked. The man opened the SUV door. Keanu didn't say much, just that he wanted to talk to you about something important. "If you're willing, I'll take you to him." Jamal hesitated, then turned back toward his mother. She stepped forward, giving the driver a careful look before pulling Jamal aside. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. Jamal took a deep breath. "I think so, Mom. If this is really an opportunity, I can't just ignore it." She studied his face for a moment before sighing. "All right, but if anything feels wrong, you call me right away." Jamal nodded, then turned back to the driver. "Okay, let's go." He climbed into the luxurious SUV, sinking into the soft leather seats. The engine purred smoothly as they pulled away from the curb. His heart pounded in his chest, excitement mixing with nerves. He had no idea where this ride would take him, but one thing was certain. His life was about to change in ways he never imagined. Jamal could barely contain his excitement as he sat across from Rick in his office, discussing the details of the apprenticeship. The room was simple but filled with framed pictures of classic motorcycles and trophies from races and competitions. Jamal realized that he wasn't just stepping into a job. He was stepping into a world where passion for machines turned into something great. Rick leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "We usually bring in guys who've already gone through some formal training, but I can see you've got real talent. More importantly, you're willing to learn, and that's what matters most." Jamal nodded eagerly. "I love working on bikes. I've been doing it since I was a kid, but I never thought I'd get a chance like this." Rick smiled. "Well, here's the deal. We'll start you off as an apprentice. You'll learn from some of the best mechanics, and if you do well, there's a real future for you here. You'll get paid, not a fortune, but enough to help out at home while you train. What do you think?" Jamal didn't hesitate. "I'm in, 100%. Keanu, who had been leaning against the wall watching the exchange, grinned. "That's what I like to hear." Rick extended a hand, and Jamal shook it firmly. "Welcome aboard, kid." Jamal could hardly believe it. Just days ago, he was fixing bikes behind his apartment, hoping for a future he wasn't sure he'd ever have. And now he had a real shot at making his dreams come true. When they stepped out of the office, some of the other mechanics gave Jamal a nod of approval. He knew he'd have to prove himself, but that only made him more determined. Keanu walked him outside, where the black SUV was still waiting. "I'll make sure you get home safe," he said. As they drove back, Jamal finally let himself breathe. He glanced at Keanu, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you." Keanu chuckled. "You already did by believing in yourself. You earned this, Jamal. I just helped open a door." Jamal thought about that. It was true. He had worked for this moment. He had spent years fixing things, learning, pushing himself to be better. And now, thanks to a chance meeting and a little kindness, everything was changing. When the SUV pulled up in front of his apartment, Jamal saw his mother standing outside, worry and hope written on her face. He stepped out, walked up to her, and smiled. "I got the job, Mom," he said simply. Her eyes welled with tears, and she pulled him into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, baby." As Keanu waved goodbye and the SUV drove away, Jamal looked up at the sky. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just dreaming about the future. He was stepping into it. As the SUV rolled smoothly through the city streets, Jamal sat in silence, staring out of the tinted windows. The buildings, shops, and familiar corners of his neighborhood passed by quickly, giving way to cleaner streets and taller buildings. He had never been in a car this fancy before, and everything about it felt surreal. The driver remained professional, focused on the road, only speaking once to say, "We're almost there." Jamal simply nodded, still unsure of what to expect. A part of him was nervous. What if this was all too good to be true? But another part of him, the part that had dared to dream, told him that this was his chance, that something good was finally happening. After about 20 minutes, the SUV turned onto a private driveway, leading to a large modern building with sleek glass windows. Jamal's eyes widened as he took in the sight. It wasn't a house, but it didn't look like a regular business either. Before he could ask any questions, the car came to a stop, and the driver stepped out to open Jamal's door. "Mr. Reeves is waiting inside," the man said with a small nod. Jamal hesitated for only a second before stepping out. His sneakers crunched against the pavement as he took in his surroundings. The air felt different here, cleaner, quieter. He followed the driver through a set of glass doors, and the moment he entered, his eyes landed on Keanu, who was leaning casually against a counter, smiling. "Jamal, glad you could make it," Keanu greeted, standing up and walking toward him. Jamal let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Yeah, I wasn't really expecting all this," he admitted, looking around in awe. Keanu chuckled. "I figured you'd be surprised. This place belongs to a friend of mine. It's a private motorcycle shop and workshop where we work on all kinds of custom bikes. When I told my friend about you, he was interested in meeting you." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. "Wait, you mean like a job interview?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Something like that," Keanu replied. "I told him you've got talent, and he wants to see it for himself. No pressure, but if you're up for it, I can show you around." Jamal could hardly believe what he was hearing. Just 2 days ago, he was fixing bikes in a small, dusty garage behind his apartment. And now, he was standing in a high-end workshop with Keanu Reeves offering him an opportunity. "Yeah," Jamal said, his voice steady but filled with excitement. "I'm definitely up for it." Keanu grinned and clapped a hand on his shoulder. "That's the spirit. Let's get started." As they walked deeper into the workshop, Jamal felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. He didn't know what would happen next, but he was ready to find out. Jamal spent the night tossing and turning, his mind racing with thoughts of the conversation at the diner. Keanu's words about pursuing his dreams lingered in his head, pushing him to consider possibilities he had long since dismissed. As dawn broke, he decided to take a walk to clear his head. The streets were quiet, the early morning sun casting long shadows on the pavement. On his way back home, Jamal stopped by his makeshift garage, a small, cluttered space behind the apartment building where he lived. It was his sanctuary, a place where he felt in control and at peace. He looked around at the tools and spare parts scattered around, each item a testament to the countless hours he'd spent learning and perfecting his craft. It was here, amidst the grease and grime, that he felt closest to his grandfather. Later that morning, Jamal was wiping his hands on a rag when he heard footsteps approaching. He turned around to see Keanu walking towards him, a smile on his face. "Hope you don't mind me dropping by," Keanu said. "I wanted to check on you after our talk last night." Jamal was surprised but pleased. "No problem at all. It's good to see you," he replied, gesturing to a makeshift stool for Keanu to sit on. As Keanu made himself comfortable, Jamal couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and curiosity. "What brought him back so soon?" "I've been thinking about what you said last night, About the costs of education and all. Keanu started, his tone serious. And I realized that maybe I could help, in a way. Jamal's heart skipped a beat. Help. From Keanu. The idea seemed far-fetched, yet the sincerity in Keanu's eyes was unmistakable. I know this might sound sudden, but I have some connections in the automotive industry. There are scholarships and internships that could really benefit someone like you, someone eager and talented, Keanu explained. If you're interested, I could make a few calls, see what's out there. The offer was overwhelming. Jamal felt a surge of hope, mixed with a healthy dose of skepticism. Why would someone like Keanu go out of his way for him? What did he see in a young kid from a rough neighborhood? Seeing Jamal's hesitation, Keanu continued, I believe everyone deserves a chance to chase their dreams, especially those who work hard for it. You remind me of some ambitious folks I knew who just needed a little push to reach their potential. Jamal was silent for a moment, processing the gravity of the offer. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. I don't even know what to say, Mr. Reeves. This could change everything for me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Just call me Keanu, he replied with a laugh. And you don't have to decide right now. Think it over, talk it over with your family. Just know that the offer stands. As Keanu left that morning, Jamal felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The path forward was still uncertain, but for the first time, the barriers seemed surmountable. He knew he had a lot to think about, but he also knew he wasn't alone. And that made all the difference.